But then what other dimensions do you do things differently today than other investors who are less successful?
I don't spend my time studying how other people are doing that. We spend most of our time studying industries, studying specific companies. We're looking for the ones who are already successful, try to answer what really make them successful. Can that success be continued? And some of the time we have answers, and some of the time we don't. We just continue to really study them, continue at it until we have an answer. I think one thing that is always important for us is this intellectual honesty. Basically knowing that we really don't know what we do know and what we don't. In other words, if you claim a circle of competence, you have to understand the edge of that competence. You have to know what is false in, what is false out. You have to be very honest with yourself. So we really insist on knowing inside and out a particular businesses, and to the point you're able to predict its outcome, for example, in the next 10 years. At least I want to know, at the worst case scenario, what the business will look like 10 years from now. And so we do have a long-term horizon in terms, we can't really predict it forever, but I want to say whether I can predict with a very high degree of confidence, say 90% of confidence, that at a minimum what the business will look like in 10 years, given all different contingencies. And so, and most of the time, by the way, we don't have an answer. And we just keep studying, keep at it. And sometimes we study for years and years before we see, okay, we really get it. And then we wait for price to come to our striking zone. And a lot of the time they don't. And so that makes our selection very, very difficult. And so when we do select them, we tend to really own them for a very, very long time, because the businesses, they're really good and we really fully understand are very rare. You know, how do you mean we really do understand that? So anything that we would own, we would buy a lot more as they go down. Yeah, if they go down 50%, 60%, 70%, we buy more. So that really gives you a measure of our definition of whether we understand them.
Okay, so what about the market today? I mean, it seems highly valued. I mean, if you look at fixed income, it seems unprecedented. That said, does the market today remind you of any historical periods you've lived through in good ways or bad? And would you have advice for anybody on how to navigate?
Well, we usually don't study too much about the market, except when they're really extreme. And this has happened to be one of those more extreme period of time. It is truly, in many ways, we're in uncharted territories. The amount of liquidity that's been printed, the level of interest rate, and also the slow pace of the growth. All of those are quite really remarkable in this period of time. So how do you really deal with them? We don't necessarily think that history will repeat. And so every time is slightly different. Instead of guessing the patterns of history and whether they will repeat, we focus on selecting companies that can really live through the thick and thin. Whatever the environment, business will continue. Somebody will do well. So we just want to really invest in those companies who's capable of dealing with those extraordinary set of uncertainties, and will be doing fine.
And how much is management a part of that? And how do you look for managements that have that capability?
Well, in a lot of the companies, the management will make big differences. The culture that the management will produce will make a big differences. But in the small set of experiences, management really matters almost nothing. But the strengths of the business itself really has a dynamic of its own that really almost anybody can run it and run it well, relatively. Now, those businesses are really rare. There are not that many. You can probably put them in one hand or two hands. And so again, I come back to the situation. Each time is different. You have to really look for each specific company in specific ways and ask all kinds of probing questions and study them over a long period of time in order to really honestly say that you actually understand them enough you can predict the outcome in 10 years, even given all the up and downs in the macro environment.
So you've lived through, in your 23 years running Himalaya, a number of major financial crises, the Asia crisis in 97, the tech bust in 2000, the financial crisis in 2008, and actually last year, the COVID-19 situation. Yeah. Are there specific things you learn about managements or companies that you look for in those crises?
Yeah. Well, so as you said, in my 24 years of managing Himalaya Capital, we have gone through several of those big crises. Each time when that happens, it was billed as once in a century crisis. It probably was, except it happens on a time frame of every 5 to 10 years. So the financial market boom and bust has been a constant phenomenon since the beginning of the financial market several hundred years ago. And it was driven by human nature. As long as human nature remained that way, it will never change. It will always be with us. As a product of evolution, we humans are basically run not necessarily in a very rational way. Now, we're very good at rationalization, but we're really not very good at being rational. So we always are looking for, in a sense, we're governed by some set of hard-coded instincts. And we're looking for a zero sum, and we're looking for fast money, and then you got really totally scared when things goes against you. So that's basic sense of greed and fear would always drive the financial market up and down. Particularly when it comes to money, humans are very funny in a sense. They tend to evoke the primal part of human nature. And so particularly relates to financial market, a security market, money, that human tendency of the extreme instincts become more amplified and more extreme. And that's why the financial market from the very beginning has always been characterized by boom and bust, and will remain so. Now, how do you deal with such an environment that will be constant? Well, one way to deal with that is to anticipate that always on the corner at all times. And that's basically our attitude, that financial crisis will happen all the time. People will always be driven by fear, by euphoria, by this extreme kind of up and downs. And so we're looking for businesses that are capable of living through that. And even businesses that could really thrive in that environment, in the sense have a certain characteristic of anti-fragile. And so that up and down becomes somewhat friendly for us, in the sense that when our favorite company is on sale, discounted by 50, 60, 70%, if we have money, we'll buy more of it. If we don't have money, it is a hallmark of a good investor. You can sit through watching your portfolio down by 50% and not being affected at all. On the other hand, other side of the coin is that you're equally unaffected when everybody around you are making fast money, fast and furious, a lot of them. And you're really seemingly totally left behind. And so, and that's really part of the temperament that most people don't have. And that's why not everybody can succeed in this game of the investment. And so to succeed in this game requires certain temperament and a certain understanding of human nature. Also, a certain commonsensical approach, and knowing that your investment return eventually will mirror the actual business return by actual businesses. And we know in real life, in real businesses don't really change by day, by hour, by week, by months. It took years for them to really either go up or down. And so you should expect your investment result to come in over slowly, gradually over a long period of time. So the short-term phenomena should not really impact you as much, either on the up or on down. And so if you have that basic temperament and basic approaches, what you're going to find is that both the euphoria as well as the crush actually can serve you well. And this is really going back to Ben Graham's basic concept of Mr. Market that is there to serve you, not to instruct you. Except in real game of investment, those phenomena, both on the up and down, tend to be quite extreme and testing. And so the other thing that will be very testing is that you really do need to understand the business itself. And if you really try to pretend you understand, and you're really driven by something else other than deep understanding, you'll be tested. And so that's the salient nature of the financial market. I sometimes almost feel that they exist to catch human weaknesses. That if you really don't understand something that you pretend to, you will be busted at some point. But if you truly understand, you will be able to add when the security really down 50, 60, 70%.